Okay, so you want to understand democracy better.
Uh-huh.
Maybe there's an election coming up.
Yeah.
Or you're prepping for some kind of debate you're going to have.
Yeah.
Or maybe, you're just kind of curious about how this whole system works.
For sure.
Well,
Yeah.
you've come to the right place.
Absolutely.
Today we are taking a deep dive
A deep dive.
into democracy.
Right.
From ancient Greece to modern governance.
It's a fascinating book.
It is.
It really is.
We're going to be looking at where democracy came from,
Yeah.
the challenges it faces,
Mm-hmm.
and where it might be headed.
Right.
And trust me,
Yeah.
there are some surprising twists and turns along the way.
It's a journey that spans millennia
Oh, yeah.
and touches every corner of the globe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we are going to start way back
Okay.
in ancient Greece,
Ancient Greece.
the birthplace of democracy.
As we know it.
Now, most people have heard of Athenian democracy.
Right.
But what's really interesting is how different it was from what we practice today.
It was a radical experiment for its time,
Yeah.
but it was also
That was very limited.
the white limited, yeah.
Okay, so let's break that down.
Okay.
We know that women, slaves, and foreigners couldn't vote.
Mm-hmm.
That's like over 80% of the population.
Yeah.
That's a far cry from
Yeah. But
our modern understanding of for the people, right?
it certainly raises questions about whose voices were truly represented
Right.
in this democracy.
Yeah.
One theory about this exclusion is that the Athenians saw a direct link
Okay.
between participation in democracy and military service.
Okay.
Since women, slaves, and foreigners weren't expected to fight for the city-state,
Right.
they were excluded from the political decision-making.
Makes sense.
It's a stark reminder
Yeah.
that even groundbreaking systems
Mm-hmm.
can reflect the prejudices of their time.
It's a really good point.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the assumptions and biases that might be baked into our own systems today,
Absolutely.
even if we don't realize it.
Studying history
Yeah.
helps us see how those assumptions have evolved.
Right.
And it challenges us to think critically about our own systems.
So how did Athenian democracy actually work in practice?
Well,
They had this thing called the Ekklesia, right?
yes, the Ekklesia was a massive assembly
Yeah.
where all eligible citizens could gather to debate and vote on laws directly.
Wow.
Imagine thousands of people participating in direct democracy,
Uh-huh.
shaping their society's rules firsthand.
Wow.
It was a bold experiment in collective decision-making.
That's such a contrast to our representative democracies today.
Right.
What are the advantages of that system?
Well, for one,
Yeah.
it fostered a strong sense of civic engagement.
Okay.
Citizens weren't just passive voters,
Yeah.
they were active participants
Right.
in shaping their community.
Yeah.
It also aimed to prevent the concentration of power
Uh-huh.
in the hands of a few.
But choosing leaders by lottery.
Yeah.
I mean, was that really effective?
It was certainly unique.
Yeah.
The Athenians saw it as a way to prevent corruption
Okay.
and ensure that leadership was seen as a civic duty,
Mm-hmm.
not a path to power or personal gain.
Right.
Of course, it also had its downsides.
Yeah.
It meant that leaders weren't necessarily chosen
Right.
based on their experience or qualifications,
Right.
which could lead to inconsistency and challenges in governing.
It makes you wonder if there's a middle ground somewhere.
Yeah.
A way to balance the benefits of direct citizen involvement with the need for expertise and stability.
It's a tension that
Yeah.
democracies have grappled with for centuries.
Yeah.
And it's a debate that continues to this day.
So Athenian democracy had its shining moments, but it ultimately didn't last.
Right.
What led to its downfall?
Well, a number of factors contributed.
Like what?
There were internal conflicts,
Okay.
wars with neighboring city-states,
Mm-hmm.
and a growing gap between rich and poor.
That sounds eerily familiar.
It does, doesn't it?
Are those some of the universal challenges that democracies face? Even today?
Yes.
Yeah.
History shows us that even the most innovative systems can crumble if they don't adapt to changing circumstances
Right.
and address underlying issues like inequality and instability.
Wow.
Athenian democracy serves as a cautionary tale,
Yeah.
reminding us that democratic values require constant vigilance and a commitment to ongoing reform.
Okay, so Athenian democracy fades.
Fades away.
And we fast forward through history a bit.
Okay.
The Roman Republic
Yeah.
also had democratic elements,
Right.
but ultimately fell to emperors and empire building.
Emperors and empires, yeah.
Then we get to the Middle Ages,
Yeah.
which,
not really known for democracy.
We're not exactly known for power to the people.
Right.
What happens next?
Well, after the collapse of the Roman Empire, Europe saw the rise of monarchies and feudal systems.
Okay.
Democracy, as the Greeks understood it,
Yeah.
essentially went dormant for centuries.
So centuries.
But fast forward to the Enlightenment, and those ideas about individual rights and self-governance
Yeah.
start to resurface.
Like rediscovering a lost treasure.
It is, yeah. Thinkers like John Locke
Yeah.
challenged the divine right of kings,
Okay.
arguing that governments derive their legitimacy from the consent of the governed.
Okay.
These ideas planted the seeds for a resurgence of democratic ideals.
And that led to some major upheavals, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The English Civil War,
Uh-huh.
the American Revolution, and the French Revolution
Yeah.
were all sparked by a rejection of absolute monarchy
Yeah.
and a demand for greater citizen participation in government.
These weren't just like isolated incidents,
No,
were they?
not at all.
They all seem to share a common thread of pushing back against the concentration of power.
You're right.
Right.
These revolutions reflected a growing global trend
Uh-huh.
towards challenging the old order
Yeah.
and demanding more inclusive forms of governance.
Yeah.
While these early attempts to establish republics faced their own challenges,
Sure.
they marked a turning point in the pursuit of democratic ideals.
Yeah.
And interestingly, they also forced societies to grapple with the idea of representation
Okay.
as populations grew and societies became more complex.
Yeah.
The Athenian model of direct democracy became less feasible.
So that's where the idea of representative democracy comes in.
Exactly.
Right.
The concept of citizens electing individuals to represent their interests in government
Right.
emerged as a necessary adaptation to the realities of larger and more complex societies.
So we're starting to see the outlines of the modern democratic systems we recognize today.
Yes.
But as you mentioned, there were still limitations.
There were.
Especially when it came to who got to participate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The early stages of modern democracy were still marked by significant exclusions.
Right.
In many countries, women, people of color, and those without property were denied the right to vote.
Wow.
These exclusions would become focal points of social and political movements in the centuries that followed.
Okay, so democracy is evolving.
It is.
It's messy, it's imperfect, but it's starting to make its way onto the world stage.
Yeah.
But then the 20th century rolls around and things get even more complicated.
The 20th century was a period of both triumph and crisis for democracy.
Wow.
The rise and fall of fascism,
Yeah.
the horrors of World War II, the Cold War's ideological battle between democracy and communism.
Right.
All of these events profoundly shaped the global landscape and forced democracies to confront new and complex challenges.
It was like democracy was being tested on a massive scale.
It's a crucible.
Right.
Yeah.
And then just when we thought we had a handle on things, the internet and digital technologies completely transformed the game.
The rise of the digital age has had a profound and multifaceted impact on democracy, creating both incredible opportunities and unprecedented challenges.
And that leads us right into the complexities of modern democracy in a digital world.
Yeah.
It's a topic that deserves its own deep dive.
It sure does.
Which we'll get into in part 2 of this episode.
Absolutely.
Stay with us.
Please do. Welcome back to our deep dive into democracy.
Now, we talked about how Athenian democracy was all about direct participation.
Right.
But that's not really feasible with millions or even billions of people.
It's not, no.
So how do modern democracies function?
Well, most democracies today operate as representative systems.
Okay.
Instead of every citizen voting directly on every issue, they elect representatives to make those decisions on their behalf.
So it's like we're delegating that responsibility to people.
Yes.
We trust
Exactly.
to make the best choices for us. But that raises the question of trust, doesn't it? How can we be sure that our elected officials are truly acting in our best interests?
That's a fundamental challenge for any representative democracy.
Yeah.
And it's one that has been magnified in the digital age.
Okay, so let's talk about the digital age.
Okay.
We touched on this at the end of part 1.
Yeah.
Talking about how technology is this double-edged sword when it comes to democracy.
Absolutely.
It can connect people.
Yes.
And allow for greater participation, but it can also be used to spread misinformation.
Right.
And manipulate public opinion.
Exactly. Social media in particular has become a powerful force in shaping political discourse, with both positive and negative implications for democracy.
Right.
On the one hand, it's a powerful tool for mobilization, allowing citizens to connect, organize, and voice their opinions in ways never before imagined.
We've seen countless examples of social media being used to drive social change.
For sure.
To bring attention to injustices and even topple authoritarian regimes.
Absolutely.
It can be incredibly empowering.
It can be.
But as you said, there's a flip side.
There is.
These platforms are also incredibly susceptible to manipulation and the spread of misinformation.
They are.
Right.
Algorithms often prioritize engagement over accuracy. Which means that sensationalized or misleading content can quickly go viral, shaping public perception and influencing elections.
I think we've all seen those fake news articles. Or those outrageously biased posts that somehow get shared thousands of times.
Absolutely.
It's hard to know what to believe sometimes.
It is.
And it definitely creates a sense of distrust, not only in the information we're seeing, but also in systems that are supposed to be protecting us from manipulation.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
This erosion of trust is one of the biggest challenges facing democracies today.
Yeah.
And it's not just about fake news. We've also seen sophisticated disinformation campaigns orchestrated by foreign governments or special interest groups, aiming to interfere with elections or sow discord within societies.
It's scary to think that something as seemingly innocuous as a social media post could be part of a larger campaign.
It is.
To undermine democracy.
Yes.
It makes those stories about election hacking and foreign interference seem less like a spy thriller and more like a very real threat.
Absolutely.
It underscores the vulnerability of our democratic systems in the digital age.
It does.
And raises important questions about how we can protect the integrity of our elections.
Yes.
Ensure that information shared online is accurate and reliable.
For sure.
So we've talked about the ways that technology can threaten democracy, but I'm curious about the other side of that coin.
Oh, okay.
Are there ways that technology is being used to try to strengthen democratic processes?
There are definitely some promising developments in that area.
Okay.
We're seeing a growing movement towards what's called e-democracy.
Okay.
Which uses online platforms to increase citizen participation and make government more accessible and transparent.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like in practice?
Estonia is a great example.
Okay.
They've been pioneers in e-democracy.
Okay.
Allowing citizens to vote online.
Wow.
Access government services digitally. And even participate in online forums. To discuss policy proposals.
That sounds amazing.
It's pretty impressive.
I wish we could do more of that here. But I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical about online voting.
Okay.
Could it really be secure?
It's a valid concern. Security is paramount in any e-democracy system. But Estonia has invested heavily in cybersecurity measures. And their system is considered one of the most secure in the world.
Wow.
They've shown that it's possible to conduct secure and transparent elections online.
That's encouraging to hear. Are there other examples of technology being used to improve democracy?
Yes. There's also a growing interest in what's called deliberative democracy. It's a model that uses technology to facilitate more informed and inclusive decision-making.
So instead of just reacting to sound bites or social media posts, we actually take the time to think critically about the issues. And engage in meaningful discussions with each other.
Exactly. In deliberative democracy, diverse groups of citizens are randomly selected to participate in discussions about specific policy issues. They receive information from experts, deliberate with one another, and then provide recommendations to policymakers.
It's like bringing back the Athenian assembly, but with a more structured approach. And the help of technology to bring people together.
Exactly.
I really like that idea.
It's a promising way to bridge divides. Find common ground on complex issues, and ensure that diverse perspectives are considered in the decision-making process.
But even with these advancements in technology, there are still deeper systemic problems that democracy faces, right?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The challenges facing democracy today go far beyond technology.
Right.
We have to address the growing inequalities within societies, the undue influence of wealthy individuals and special interests, and the erosion of trust in democratic institutions themselves.
Right.
These are complex, interconnected issues.
Okay, so let's unpack some of that.
Okay.
Let's start with inequality.
Right.
It feels like the gap between the rich and the poor is widening everywhere you look.
It does seem that way.
And that this concentration of wealth at the top is giving a small elite an outsized amount of power and influence.
It does.
How does this impact democracy?
Well, when wealth and power are concentrated in the hands of a few, it undermines the very principle of political equality that is at the heart of a functioning democracy.
Right.
The voices of ordinary citizens can be drowned out by the lobbying efforts of corporations and wealthy individuals who can use their resources to influence policy decisions.
It's like the system is rigged to favor those who are already at the top.
It can feel that way.
And those of us without those resources are left struggling to be heard. We see this playing out in so many areas, from healthcare to education to the environment.
Absolutely. Take climate change, for example.
Okay.
We know that the vast majority of scientists agree that it's a real and urgent threat, and public opinion polls consistently show strong support for government action to address it. But progress has been frustratingly slow.
It's infuriating, actually.
I understand.
It feels like our elected officials are often more beholden to lobbyists and special interests than they are to their own constituents.
It can feel that way, yeah.
Climate change is a perfect example of how concentrated wealth and power, often tied to specific industries like fossil fuels, can obstruct progress on crucial issues. Even when there is widespread public support for change.
That's right.
So how do we break through that?
That's the question.
What can be done to address these deeper challenges to democracy?
Right.
Is democracy even capable of reforming itself?
Yeah.
Or are we just stuck in a cycle of decline?
That's the fundamental question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's one that has no easy answers.
Right.
Democracy is inherently messy. It's always evolving.
Right.
And it demands constant attention and engagement.
Yeah.
But I do believe that democracy, for all its flaws, still holds the greatest potential for creating a more just and equitable world.
I want to believe that too.
I think we all do.
But where do we even begin?
Yeah.
What can we as individuals do to make a difference when we're up against such powerful forces?
Well, I don't think it's about having all the answers right now.
Okay.
It's more about a shift in mindset.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that democracy isn't a spectator sport. It's a participatory process that requires our active and ongoing engagement.
So what can we do?
We can start by educating ourselves about the issues, engaging in thoughtful discussions with each other, and supporting candidates who align with our values.
So it's about showing up, speaking out,
absolutely,
and demanding better from our leaders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also about recognizing that change doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It takes time. It takes persistence.
Yeah.
And it takes a collective effort. But I believe that if we work together, we can create a more inclusive and responsive democracy that truly serves the needs of all people.
Right.
Not just a privileged few.
Welcome back to our deep dive into democracy. In the previous parts, we've traced its evolution from ancient Greece to the digital age. And explored some of the challenges and opportunities facing democracies around the world.
All around the world.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that democracy is more than just a set of rules or institutions.
I think so too.
It's a living, breathing system that requires constant attention and engagement from all of us.
It really does.
Especially in today's world.
Yeah.
We're facing so many complex and interconnected crises. Climate change, economic inequality, political polarization, the erosion of trust in institutions.
It's a lot.
It feels overwhelming, honestly.
I understand.
Like, how can we possibly address all of these massive problems?
Right.
What can one person even do?
I think it's important to remember that throughout history, progress has often come from ordinary people who refuse to accept the status quo.
Yeah.
Think about the movements that have transformed our world.
Like what?
The abolition of slavery,
right.
The fight for women's suffrage, the civil rights movement, the push for LGBTQ plus equality.
Yeah.
All of these were driven by individuals who believed that a better world was possible.
So it's about not giving up hope.
It is.
Even when things seem bleak.
Yeah.
It's about believing that our actions, however small they may seem, can contribute to a larger movement for change.
Absolutely.
I think it's also about expanding our understanding of who we, the people, really are.
That's a good point.
Democracy's greatest strength lies in its capacity to evolve, to become more inclusive, representative over time.
Yeah.
And we've seen this throughout history, right?
Yeah.
The definition of we the people has been broadened through struggle and activism to include those who were once excluded. Women.
People of color.
People of color.
Marginalized communities.
Absolutely. Each wave of expansion has made democracy stronger and more resilient.
For sure.
And that process of inclusion and expansion is ongoing.
Yes.
As we look towards the future.
Yeah.
We need to be asking ourselves, how can we make democracy even more responsive to the needs and aspirations of all people?
It's a good question.
How can we ensure that everyone feels like they have a voice and a stake in the system?
Everyone having a voice.
Those are big questions.
They are.
What might the future of democracy look like?
Oh.
What are some of the ideas and innovations that could help us create a more just, equitable, and sustainable world?
Well, we've already talked about e-democracy and deliberative democracy as promising avenues for increasing participation and fostering more informed decision-making.
Right.
But there are other interesting ideas out there as well.
Like what?
One concept that's gaining traction is liquid democracy.
Liquid democracy.
Liquid democracy.
That sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
What is it?
Imagine a system where you have the choice to either vote directly on an issue or to delegate your vote to someone you trust. Someone who might have more expertise in that particular area.
So if there's an issue I'm really passionate about, I can vote on it directly.
You got it.
But if there's like a complex policy issue that I don't fully understand, I can choose to delegate my vote.
You can.
To someone whose judgment I respect.
That's the idea.
It's like a hybrid between direct democracy and representative democracy.
It is.
Okay, cool.
It's about giving people more choice and flexibility in how they participate in the democratic process.
Another idea that has sparked a lot of debate is universal basic income.
Oh, yeah.
Or UBI.
UBI.
UBI is the idea of giving everyone a guaranteed minimum income.
Yes.
Regardless of their employment status.
That's right.
Proponents argue that it would provide a safety net for those struggling to make ends meet, reduce economic inequality, and empower people to pursue education, entrepreneurship, or creative endeavors without the constant fear of financial insecurity.
That's the argument.
It's a pretty radical idea.
It is.
But it's one that's gaining more and more attention as automation and technological advancements continue to disrupt traditional employment models.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, there's artificial intelligence, which is rapidly transforming so many aspects of our lives.
It is.
It raises a lot of questions about the future of democracy.
It does.
On the one hand, you could imagine AI being used to help manage complex systems more efficiently, analyze data to inform better policy decisions, and even help identify and mitigate biases in decision-making processes.
Yeah, those are all potential benefits.
But there are also real concerns.
There are.
About the ethical implications of using AI in governance.
Absolutely.
Like who controls the algorithms?
Right.
How do we ensure transparency and accountability?
Yeah.
I've seen enough dystopian sci-fi movies to know that AI can be a powerful tool for good or for evil.
We have to be very careful about how we integrate AI into our democratic systems. We need to have open and honest conversations about the potential risks and benefits.
Yeah.
And we need to establish clear ethical guidelines and safeguards.
It's clear that technology, for better or worse, will continue to play a huge role in shaping the future of democracy.
It will.
But at the end of the day, it's up to us as citizens to determine how we want to use these tools.
Absolutely.
And to ensure that they are aligned with our values.
It's our responsibility.
So for our listeners out there who are feeling inspired to get more involved, what would you say is the most important thing they can do to make a difference?
I think the most important thing is to remember that you're not alone.
Okay.
There are millions of people around the world who care about democracy and are working to make it stronger.
That's good to hear.
Find your community.
Okay.
Connect with others who share your values and get involved in whatever way you can. Whether it's volunteering in your local community, supporting a cause you believe in, or simply engaging in thoughtful conversations with your friends and family.
Right.
Every action counts.
That's a great message to end on.
Thanks.
So listeners, as you go about your day, consider this. What role will you play in shaping the future of democracy?